What made YouTube so special? This is a question we have already discussed in the past on this channel in great detail, but there is at least one important thing to take away from all that. Just like all the top businesses in the world, YouTube succeeded because it solved a problem, and it solved it in both a creative and immersive way. Through the help of VCs and, technological loopholes, YouTube was able to maximize its potential at growing to the very top and becoming the #1 video sharing site on the internet before even leaving beta. Now that is quite the feat, achieving worldwide recognition and becoming what was, at the time, the fastest growing website in history, and it only took about a year. But what happens when your success starts catching up with you and the roof starts falling in? YouTube was in a very unique position by the time 2006 came around. Because of its distinguished mission and business model, it actually had the curse of being too good at what it did. The art of online video sharing wasn't really something tangible until YouTube came along and showed what its capabilities were. For the first time, you could easily upload and search for whatever you want without any consequences. You probably see where this is going. As a byproduct of its popularity, YouTube set a precedent for what kind of challenges and customs video sharing sites would have to confront moving forward, something that wasn't really taken into account beforehand. It highlighted just how expensive video hosting was, and as YouTube's traffic increased, so did their expenses and demand for infrastructure. The site's growing recognition as the seemingly boundless powerhouse of video content eventually caught the attention of the higher-ups, the corporations, and they too wanted a piece of the pie. Legal issues, rising costs, and limited capital were now in the picture, and it was because of these key problems that YouTube's days were now looking numbered. Was a website like this just too good to be true? The whole venture was just becoming unrealistic, and YouTube could no longer operate as some grassroots independent company. It needed to become something much more official. If you can't beat the system, then become it. Give the industry something they now could not live without. Give them the future. And naturally, one company would step forward to wipe the slate clean and give YouTube the everlasting online presence that it deserved. A company called Google. What followed would arguably become one of the most controversial and influential business transactions in history. Google buying YouTube. This was a decision that is still felt today in a lot of areas, not even just on YouTube, but even in the digital realm outside of it. And today, we're going to talk about why. You hear that? That is the sound of people stealing your information. Quiet. You really don't hear that? Well, I guess people are so used to not being protected online, they can't even hear what's right in front of their ears. Let NordPass help you with that. NordPass is a tool that allows you to keep all your passwords in an updated and safe environment. I think all of us at some point have been those people who keep all their passwords written down on sticky notes or some kind of notebook, and that's convenient, but risky. Anyone can just look through those and all your information is now compromised. But not with NordPass. It gives you the benefit of keeping all your passwords in one place, but protected with incredibly advanced encryption technology. NordPass Business is also a great tool for collaborative projects. Say you forgot your password and the one colleague that remembers it isn't available right now. They aren't responding to their emails. Well, because everything is in one secure and organized place, you will never have to reset a password ever again. Employees on average spend 11 hours a year resetting their passwords, which can cost as much as $5.2 million in lost production. So not only is NordPass saving you time, it is also saving you money. It is often hard for me to keep track of all the passwords I've created. NordPass Business has eliminated that. And right now they are offering a very special deal to you. By visiting my link on the screen, you can get access to 3 months of NordPass Business completely free. So go ahead and get started on securing your passwords today. First, let's take a look at where YouTube was the day it left beta, December 15th, 2005. The website was already being visited by over 2 million viewers a day, hosting around 1 million videos, already had its first video with over 1 million views, a Nike commercial uploaded the previous month, and was receiving what could have been as high as 8 million views a day. and the company had just received $3.5 million in funding from Sequoia Capital. That's a lot of millions. YouTube was no small potatoes. It was a rapidly growing community that showed no signs of stopping. It was quite literally an online snowball effect. The website started off with just a handful of users, but then those users told their friends about it, and then those people told their friends about it, etc., creating an exponential growth that was beyond comprehension. And this was largely in part because of YouTube's message to their audience, the idea that with YouTube, you can find anything and be anything. It was the whole being watched worldwide angle that really gave it its charm on top of user convenience. This primarily took the form of the online movie studio, and they really played into this, now using a 5-star rating system to distinguish between good and bad videos, much like movie critics, or even having film-related roles you could attach to your channel. This was often the selling point for the site whenever people talked about it, even being spotted on Leo Laporte's call for help. I got it right this time. See, I'm not a total screw-up. But this angle also took in other forms through what was an incredibly unique feature at the time, the ability to embed YouTube videos on your own website with a built-in player. Now, anyone could have videos on their website, whether it was to brush up their business websites or to create entertainment communities even more exclusive and personalized than they already were on their YouTube channels, essentially giving you the option to create your own web show. Think iCarly. The concept of being watched was YouTube's goal from the very beginning. The word tube in YouTube literally is a reference to the cathode ray tube televisions of the time. It just approached this concept in many ways, from being just a video repository to then fully embracing everything we just described. It was no wonder everyone wanted in on it, and now YouTube was becoming so big, even Hollywood now felt threatened. Now, put yourself into the shoes of YouTube's founders for just a second. You might be thinking, wow, that's great. Our plan worked, and we've now created one of the biggest websites on the internet. Well, if there's anything YouTube has taught us, it's that there is such a thing as too much success. To bring up a quote that I know all of us are familiar with great power comes great responsibility. And it could not be truer in this case. The more traffic you get on a website, the more resources you need to make quality use of that traffic possible. YouTube was quite relieved, to say the least, to receive this large sum of money from Sequoia Capital. But before that, things were getting a bit scary. Even Server Beach, the site's hosting service, was starting to panic a bit. Just as a recap from the previous video, YouTube was able to even get its initial footing by taking advantage of an unlimited bandwidth plan that the service provided. But neither one of them were prepared for things to get this big. It got to the point where YouTube was using up nearly all of Server Beach's resources, leaving little to no room for their other clients. As Server Beach has mentioned in retrospect, they found a way to manage. And it was probably this VC money that did it. Now, $3.5 million is a ton of money, and that doesn't even include the money made from the site's introduction of targeted advertising in February of 2006. But with the growth YouTube was experiencing, this was really just a band-aid, not a cure. YouTube was getting more popular than they could handle. But then there was another problem. Much like how YouTube took advantage of Server Beach's bandwidth, users were starting to take advantage of YouTube. Instead of uploading their home videos or self-made comedy skits, they were now ripping their CDs and uploading its contents to the site. Entire movies were now being uploaded to YouTube. Divided into multiple parts, of course, since YouTube videos of the time could only be a certain length and file size. Who could forget Harriet the Spy, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3? Now you probably see the problem here. In addition to being the hub of creative content primarily from aspiring filmmakers, YouTube was now a repository of copyrighted content. This was just Napster all over again. But even worse, since Napster required downloading the material, and this didn't. It was even easier to access the content and even less effort. Now we'll get more into detail on these copyright issues in just a minute. But you need to understand just the kind of hole YouTube was digging itself in. On top of its already costly infrastructure, was YouTube also going to be dealing with costly lawsuits? This website was just turning into a money pit. Even with the immense popularity and the millions of dollars in funding, it was unsure if YouTube was going to still be around by the end of the year. They needed help from someone who had experience with resolving big, sophisticated problems, someone already familiar with the business practices of the online world. They needed corporate intervention. So now enters a company you've probably heard of called Google. Even though YouTube was having all these problems, that doesn't mean the idea of the website was stupid. In fact, a lot of other companies were trying to replicate it, but just failed, as they simply could not compete with YouTube's unique personality and large community, including the biggest online company in the world, and their new project, Google Video. Created just a month before YouTube and run by Susan Wojcicki, Google Video started off basically as Google Images but for video. Whatever you searched, it would only filter in the websites that had videos on them. But as the popularity of YouTube came along, they soon added the option of uploading your own videos directly to the site, making them native and only to be found on Google Video. But at that point, YouTube already had such a head start compared to everyone else that most people didn't even care to entertain the alternatives. Not to mention that Google Video from the very beginning was determined on pleasing corporate broadcasters and taking down any copyrighted content they could find. YouTube, on the other hand, pretty much didn't care at all, which gave people even more reason to use YouTube instead. Google Video turned out to be an incredible failure, but seeing the struggles YouTube was having with their growing platform, they took it as an opportunity to turn things around. Google could now own the world's greatest video sharing site, and the current owners wouldn't have to worry about all these problems anymore. There is now mutualism. Everybody wins. On October 9th, 2006, it was publicly announced that Google would acquire YouTube for $1.65 billion worth of stock, with the actual purchase occurring on November 13th. YouTube was now the fastest company to reach a $1 billion valuation in history. Chad Hurley would remain the CEO of YouTube until October of 2010, and Steve Chen would remain with the company until 2009. Jawed Karim had already left YouTube quite early on to pursue his college degree in computer science and eventually become a professor. But he too was paid quite nicely, with his shares amounting to around $64 million. And as for Google Video, well, it would kind of just sit in limbo until being discontinued in 2012. To the outside world, the acquisition of YouTube was both a shock and something that created a lot of ambivalence. People couldn't really tell if this was a good thing or a bad thing, which led to very mixed reactions. And of course, the acquisition didn't just stop all these legal challenges. But I know exactly the right person to go into more detail on this.
When Google, the internet's original leading encyclopedia of cat videos, decided to buy YouTube, the budding new platform where people went to watch, well, more cat videos, everyone had an opinion about it. Eric Schmidt, Google's CEO at the time, was practically doing cartwheels. He gushed, stating, "This is the next step in the evolution of the internet," comparing YouTube's Chad and Steve to Google's very own Sergey and Larry. For those of you not familiar with the comparison, that's like saying your high school garage band was on par with the Beatles. It's pretty high praise. While Google was ecstatic about the purchase, the average person during this time didn't know how to feel about the acquisition. You have to remember, this was in 2006. This was before Facebook bought Instagram, Elon Musk bought Twitter, and everyone started panicking as soon as a company was acquired by another one. The average person back then was like, sure, YouTube's cool and all, I just hope the platform will last. You see, in the early 2000s, many websites blew up and because of countless issues, disappeared into thin air. So the question wasn't so much, was this acquisition a good thing, but more, will YouTube last? Mark Cuban, the billionaire entrepreneur, was convinced Google was crazy to take on YouTube. Cuban thought it was a bad deal because of YouTube's high acquisition cost and more specifically because of its legal issues. His concerns centered around copyright infringement, a can of worms YouTube had pretty much ignored up until this point. At this time, users were uploading copyrighted stuff left, right, and center. YouTube was basically America's funniest online videos plus illegal SNL clips. Users uploaded copyrighted content from movies, music, shows, and more. Many echoed Cuban's sentiment, drawing parallels between YouTube and Napster, predicting the company would be sued into oblivion and maybe even cease to exist. And sure enough, half of that prediction was true. YouTube got sued into oblivion. In March 2007, Viacom sued YouTube in the epic legal battle of Viacom v. YouTube. Viacom is sort of like that kid in high school whose parents owned like 7 small businesses in the area and have a library named after them, and you'd go get ice cream after school one day and find out, oh, they own this too? That's basically Viacom, or as they're known as today, Paramount. They're a massive media conglomerate, and when I say massive, I mean like Godzilla level massive. They're not just big, they're own half the stuff you watch on TV big. Think MTV, Nickelodeon, and Comedy Central. Yep, those guys. Anyways, Viacom wielded a lawsuit that screamed, "You owe us $1 billion for copyright infringement," and alleged that YouTube was willingly turning a blind eye to the uploaded copyrighted material. But unlike Napster, YouTube was ready to fight. YouTube and Google spent months convincing major media executives that they could make money off the platform and what their plans were for fixing YouTube's content copyright system. And it worked. It took 3 years of legal back and forth that they're probably going to make a Netflix series about someday, but a court finally ruled in YouTube's favor in 2010. The court stated that as long as YouTube removed the infringing content when notified, it was in the clear. And with this win, plus the measures YouTube put in place to prevent copyrighted material from being uploaded, the platform was no longer looked at as a flight risk. And the YouTube copyright wars were over.
The YouTube copyright wars were unfortunately not over. The lawsuit did legitimize Google's acquisition of YouTube, and it paved the way for YouTube's legal landscape for years to come. In fact, not even just YouTube. Many other social media platforms would then follow a very similar model. This was a bit of a victory for YouTube at the time, but now there was a new question. When does the concept of copyright infringement go too far? They already solved one problem. Because of these legal battles, now millions of people weren't at risk of immediately getting a lawsuit for uploading copyrighted content to the site. Instead, the offending content was just taken down and the uploader sanctioned by YouTube. There was now a compromise. But where do we draw the line between blatant copyright infringement and corporate censorship? This unfortunately continues to be an ongoing battle, but we very well may see history rhyme. But the fact remains that YouTube was just going to have to rely on exclusively making original content to be profitable. And Google would now do everything it could to make that happen, while also keeping the site free. Built-in advertising would soon start to show up, and dating as far back as August of 2006, they even entertained the idea of showing ads on videos before they start. And CEO Chad Hurley was against this concept, saying, "We think there are better ways for people to engage with brands than forcing them to watch a commercial before seeing content. You could ask anyone on the net if they enjoy that experience, and they'd probably say no." But even after Google's purchase, and even under Hurley's control, they eventually changed their stance on this, and these ads were implemented not too long after. And now YouTube looked into making money off the users themselves, introducing the YouTube Partner Program in December of 2007. If you met YouTube's criteria and were popular enough, you could now make money off your videos through YouTube putting these ads on them. This would provide the creator an incentive to keep creating content, which meant more money for YouTube. And in more recent time, YouTube has added ad-free subscription services, and at one point even made their own Hollywood-level original works, much like Netflix with YouTube Red, just to further attempt at turning their original work into a profit. And there's that important word again, profit. Even though Google has a lot of money, how do they have enough to both support the ever-growing bandwidth demands of YouTube and the ability to make a return on their investment? Well, as it turns out, they probably don't. According to some sources, YouTube allegedly has never turned a profit. Yes, YouTube's annual returns are big, but apparently not enough to offset its annual expenses, creating what is called a net loss. But because Google makes their income in so many other areas, YouTube is seen more as an asset rather than some moneymaker. Therefore, it doesn't put the company in much jeopardy. With the constant ads and with essentially becoming the standard of all digital media, Google's acquisition of YouTube quite literally brought cable TV to the internet. And that can be a very scary thought to a lot of people. Many of us, for the longest time, would go to the internet as an escape from corporate greed and many of the dark aspects of capitalism. But, and we may not even realize it in some cases, it is still there. And yet we still find ourselves entertained at the end of the day. Maybe we're not as fulfilled as we could be because of that, but as we've demonstrated, with the way our world is currently structured, is such an online utopia even realistic? Whew. Man, that's a pretty nihilistic outlook to this entire situation. Perhaps it's a system that needs big changing, or perhaps not. But in the meantime, and as the world progresses, it's best that we primarily focus on the good. Of course, things could be much better, but when we look at what we currently have access to, it's really not all that bad. If things just never changed, we probably wouldn't even have YouTube at all. I wouldn't be here doing what I love to do the very most, and I would probably still be watching Murder, She Wrote at 3 o'clock in the morning. Every cloud has a silver lining. And even with a big decision such as Google buying YouTube, that is no exception. Thank you again to NordPass for sponsoring this video. Visit the link on the screen to get 3 months of completely free password security. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and click the notification bell so that you never miss a future video.